Hello viewers, welcome to our show Focal Point today. Today's program is not a traditional interview. Immediately after the independence, Awami League started forming and propagating its own distorted version of history of liberation war, which increased manifolds in the last 1.5 decades. Most of the people, especially the post-war generations, being bombarded by decades-long Awami League propaganda through textbooks and media. We are not fully aware of the contributions of Shahid President Zia Rahman in our liberation war. Everything, starting from the language movement to the independence of Bangladesh, is being portrayed as the contribution of a particular person, family, or group. And on the other hand, there is an attempt to portray Shahid Zia as a villain. And in both cases, the distortion is so extreme that it does not give common people the idea of true history, but the repetition of the same words, which is deeply disturbing sometimes. At the same time, we are deprived of knowing the real history of the country. That's the reason today we are joining with Mr. Amir Mahmud Chowdhury, who has a clear idea about the history, and there is no reason for him to distort that. We will hear from him about our liberation war, about Shahid President Zia Rahman, and post-independence Bangladesh. Today, we will have a lengthy conversation, I must say, with him, and who is the witness of the history, Mr. Amir Mahmud Chowdhury. We salute the martyred President Zia Rahman as a great proclaimer of independence, the great hero of consolidating and securing Bangladesh in the midst of the November 1975 revolution. Bangladesh, we pay tribute to him for reestablishing the extinct multi-party democracy, making famine-stricken Bangladesh a self-sufficient, one ready-made government, and exporting manpower to the Middle East. As a great proclaimer of independence, the great hero of consolidating and securing Bangladesh in the midst of the November 1975 revolution. We pay tribute to him for reestablishing the extinct multi-party democracy, making famine-stricken Bangladesh a self-sufficient one in food, ready-made garments, and exporting manpower to Middle East. He was a statesman who gave this country a strong economic base. So now, sir, my first question to you is, popularly we know that Shahid Zia's role for our freedom started in 1971. But I heard that he was aware and raised his voice about the discrimination and injustice of Pakistan towards the people of East Pakistan long back. What most of the people in the country do not know much. If you had kindly started today's discussion from that particular moment.
Thank you, Rumeen. So let us start with how history is made. History is written by historians, not by politicians.
Yes.
So present Bangladesh scenario, as far as history goes, it is a construct of the regime. And the regime is trying to construct their own history. And there is a saying that history belongs to the victors. Now that they have grabbed the power by disenfranchising the citizens of Bangladesh, so they think they are victorious, so they want to construct their own history. And unfortunately, history is never, in the long run, stays that way, because it is always revisited, and true historians, they do their homework, they do their investigation, and historians have a way of writing history. It is the documentation, it is the hearsay, it is the folklore, it is basically a construct of so many activities that historians have to take care of. So this history is not going to stay for so long because this is their own construct, you know. And when the politicians become historians, that history is absolutely becomes a propaganda that does not remain a history anymore. And more so, when you want to use the state apparatus to create a history, to construct a history of your own making, of your own liking, rather, then you start to use the not only the state apparatus, you also the current dispensation is also using the judiciary, and like the Declaration of Independence, you know, and so if you are riding on the back of judiciary and use the state apparatus to construct your own history, which is happening in Bangladesh right now, this history is not going to stay. It's not going to last for too long. So it will be revisited and it will be written by historians, and true history will come out, depending on the historians' work with the documentation and folklore and how the contemporary writers write about the history. Contemporary, not only historians, contemporary various writers in the political academia and various other writers who really put down in black and white the real history. And like if you compare this with Bangladesh's current scenario, the Bangladesh's war of liberation is recorded through the writings of many contemporary politicians, historians, and also the international media, the local media, and also hearsay by what the people heard and saw during the War of Liberation and the background of it. So in all that, you'll find, for example, the Declaration of Independence of Bangladesh. So it was heard by the whole nation, basically. So, I mean, you don't have to really judge this in any other way, but people have heard with their own 2 ears, you see. One is that. The other is the documentation of it. It has been written by so many writers about President Zia's Declaration of Independence, including Awami League leaders, including Indians who fought for the liberation of Bangladesh against Pakistan. In their books, they have also documented. When President Zia visited India, the President of India, in his speech during the dinner hosted for President Zia, he categorically mentioned that General Zia, how he declared the war of the independence of Bangladesh, and how his people loved him, and how he really have reached the heart and soul of Bangladeshi people through his role in the War of Liberation, through Declaration of Independence. So as I said earlier, the history will be written on many counts of evidence, contemporary writings, people who were involved in the War of Liberation. So this will be all recorded, I think, when you write the true history. And like President Zia's was the first person to revolt against Pakistanis in Chittagong. And he's the one who really stood there and said, we revolt, not I. He never used the word I. We revolt. And he took care of Pakistani, his senior that was in charge of the cantonment. He took care of them. Or I mean that he has really killed them. You know, General Junejo, is it a colonel or general? Junejo was the guy who was senior to him and in charge of the And he was killed basically by President Zia. And having done that, he was the first to become the first freedom fighter in Bangladesh. And then he went on to declare the war of independence from Kaluga radio station. And that was heard by the whole nation. And he was the first person who went on frontline war footing to fight the frontline war. And nobody can deny that. And how Sylhet was liberated. We all know that history. So how can you deny all these things that people know so well and still fresh on a lot of people's mind today, even today? So going back to about the history, I think I don't have to say any more than this because history will judge President Zia for his role in the War of Liberation as a declaration who declared the independence of Bangladesh, who was the first freedom fighter in Bangladesh, who was in the frontal war, who liberated Sylhet, and basically Z Force was named after him. It is the Zia and the Z Force. That is how it was named after. So having said that, I mean, there is no end to what I can talk about it the whole day, basically. But the point I'm trying to make is the history will judge him on the right side of the history, and those who are distorting and constructing their own history, they will be on the wrong side of the history.
Absolutely. Now, very often we hear that the political leadership at the time of independence talking a lot about the War of Independence as if all credit goes to them. What is the real fact? Was the political leadership of that time able to ensure adequate military preparedness against mighty Pakistani troops?
As a matter of fact, they were nowhere to be seen. You see, after the raid on 25th, 25th March, when the Pakistani army clamped down on the citizens of Bangladesh, I think there was no political leadership to guide the nation in any way. And this is where he comes in, President Zia comes in, that he is the one who revolted, he is the one who declared the War of Independence, he is the one who has driven the War of Independence and energized, encouraged, and given the spirit of liberation war, fighting out in the field. And when the people of Bangladesh, the army, the police, and the civilians joined the war. So people who are talking about liberation war and their contribution, actually they were nowhere to be seen. And a good number of them surrendered and who have also crossed the border, living a good life across the border, while General Zia and the other liberation fighters, they were fighting the frontal war. If you look at the people who were awarded even later on with the gallantry awards, who are these people? It is the General Zia, it is the people, it is the Major Hafiz, it is all these people who really are in BNP. And they have nothing to show for, really, as far as the war of liberation, the fighting the war itself. They were nowhere to be seen. So you can claim whatever you want. You can create, as I said, you can construct your own history. I mean, we also hear that other than Zia, some other leadership also declared the war, liberation of Bangladesh, declared the independence of Bangladesh. But where is the document? Who has heard it? There's nothing to be seen as a document, or no people have any knowledge of that anybody declaring other than President Zia Rahman, the independence of Bangladesh. So, I mean, it is Zia's leadership that really got the frontal war a momentum where people could join. across the board. And so these contributions are like, I mean, to dispute this, you can do that, but I don't think it will hold any water in the long run. Such disputes will not hold any water. And as I said, even the people who have fought, our neighbor, the India, who have really fought the war along with Bangladeshi, it is their statement that he is the one who declared the war of, who declared the independence of Bangladesh. And he was the fighter who was given all the credit for what he has done.
Sir, it's very unfortunate that our history has been distorted so much, especially in last few years. And we have seen that just to make sure that whatever they claim is the history, they make it a part of our constitution. That's also very unfortunate. So we want to know and hear the exact words of Shahid Zia from you during the Independence War, Telipara meeting, Sector Commander Zia, Z-Force Commander Zia, Romari Free Zone, Sylhet Liberation War, etc.
Yeah, it's all there, as you rightly said. I mean, these are all recorded in the contemporary writers' writings, if you really go through any of them. And as I said, the Awami senior leadership, including Mr. Tajuddin,
Yes.
He is the one who mentioned that how war of a declaration of independence came out from President Ziaur Rahman, and how the liberation war was fought. So Sylhet was freed, one of the countries that where Bangladesh flag was hoisted as a free country, and it was never brought down. That flag stood there all along. The canvas of Shahid Zia's liberation war is very big. I fear that I will not do justice to him by saying those words in very limited scope. By the end of March, the first meeting of the sector commanders of the Liberation War was held at today's Teliapara Tea Garden in Habiganj, where Bangladesh was divided into 4 sectors. In the first stage, Ziaur Rahman became the commander of the sector number 1, consisting of Chittagong and Chittagong Hill Tracts. In that meeting, he was able to convince the other sector commander and Commander-in-Chief, General Usmani, that guerrilla warfare against the Pakistanis could be waged temporarily, but victory was not possible without frontal warfare through regular forces if the country was to be liberated. And accepting that fact, Bangladesh Army's 1st Brigade, Z Force, was formed in July 8th Bengal Regiment, part of 1st and 5th Bengal EPR and police forces, with the first letter of Ziaur Rahman's name, Z Forces. Battle of Kamalpur was the worst frontal battle of our liberation war against the Pakistanis. Later, the Z Force conquered Sylhet and liberated the first major district of Bangladesh on 14 December 1971. Okay.
The liberation war is over and the country is now independent. But what happened to this gallant fighter?
Well, I don't think President Zia ever wanted to be rewarded. He really fought as a patriot, and as a warrior, he proved his worth by declaring the war of independence, by declaring the independence of Bangladesh. And he is the first one before anybody could really turn around and take the position of a soldier, declaring the war of independence instead of politicians. So he never thought of his own future, his own fortune, basically. He was a patriot and he wanted the country to be separated and to have independent Bangladesh. So at the end of the day, President Zia really he joined back to his rank in the army. And He worked as an army officer, as was given the position by the state. He never complained about it, even though he was superseded at times. He never complained about it. So a patriot is not worried about his recognition. He's one of those persons that he never really bothered about his recognition. He did what he had to do for his people and for his country. And I think that was Zia Rahman. And that is why we're so proud that he is the founder of BNP and we are his followers.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we know that the hopes and aspirations of the people in post-independence Bangladesh were badly hurt. And there was abnormal severe shortages and increase in prices of commodity, unemployment, famine. In addition, there was massive Awami terrorism, terrible torture by security forces, and some people were getting filthy rich overnight illegally. Can you please tell us, how was Bangladesh in those times?
You see, the whole idea of liberation war and to be separated from then Pakistan was to liberate the people and have a democratic country, freedom of expression, freedom of press, and voting rights for the people. Basically, a democratic country where every people have the equal rights, level playing field for everybody. But it turned out to be very different because when after the independence, we found that one-party system, Bakshal, was introduced and all the democratic rights were taken away. And overnight, we have seen how the media was totally controlled by banning practically all the media except the four. And there was one party system called Bakshal was introduced. And the people of Bangladesh was deprived from the whole idea of a liberation war is to bring back democratic process in the country, the rights of the Bangladeshis to determine their own future, their fate. So it was basically all taken away through one party system. It's called Bakshal, of course, we all know that. And the economic system was again a controlled economic system. You see, there was no free market and state had taken over most of the industries and the market was not given the freedom to the citizens to do their things their own way, of the free market policy, which President Zia Rahman introduced later on, the free market and level playing field for everybody. So this was a scenario that the country that went through, which fought for the freedom, which fought for the democracy, which fought for the civil liberty, which fought for the level playing field for all Bangladeshis. As we had the uneven field with Pakistan, that was the whole idea of a freedom fight. So I think everything was taken away. All the civic rights, the political rights, the right to do business, the right and liberty of a citizen. So I think this is why we saw that it also reflected in many ways how the country was run. And because it was one-party system, the participatory democracy was not there. And people's participation was totally absent. In such a scenario, basically, it was one-party system and one man who was leading the nation. And everything was unilateral. People didn't have any say in the running of the state, the running of the affairs of the state either. And so it was a total chaos. And as it happens in a one-party system, one man's running the show. So the country went through bad time politically, economically, socially, and there was a wholesale. We know that the famine. We had one of the famine that people were not even getting to a square meal in the country, and there was no really private sector participation in the running of the economic affairs of the country. So all these things really brought down the economy of the country. The social order was broken down. The political right was not there. Civic right was not there. Therefore, the country was in a state of total chaos. And this is where President Zia comes in. Once again, this is where he comes in, and he's the one who opened up the economy, the democratic rights of the citizens, and open market situation, level playing field for everybody. And so all the citizens of the state could come in and play their role. And he really involved everybody across the board, like the workforce, the labor force of the country. He personally went to the colonies of the laborers, talked to them, incentivized them. He opened the private sector for everybody to take part in the economic activities of the country. And the private sector did very well. And the farmers were given all the incentives, you see. At the irrigation system of the country, you see, the electricity, the power board, rural electrification. That really empowered the citizens of the country from this deprivation of one-party system to a democratic process where everybody have a level playing field, participation in the state affairs, voting rights, the economic rights, and the social rights were all in place. So the country has turned around completely from a one-party, a chaotic situation to a liberal democratic system where level playing field was created for all the citizens, which was the idea of the War of Independence. The whole idea was that. And President Ziaur Rahman had been, he is the one who laid in place the real democratic Bangladesh, which is level playing field for everybody, all citizens of the state across the board, across the religions, across the caste and creed. You see, this is a unique situation, a country which was in complete ruination, to take it out of that and put it into the right track on the path to prosperity. So he has been successfully been able to do that because all the citizens were given the equal rights. And one-party system was demolished, and we have the multi-party political system, whereby all the citizens could participate in changing their government, in electing their own government. The government, in turn, responsible to the citizens of the country. And this is how a true development can only take place through the citizens' participation. It's not a group of monopolists or what we see in Bangladesh, oligarchic society. And the country is really ruled and run by oligarchs. And so the whole idea of from oligarchic to democratic system is for everybody's participation, level playing field for everybody, which is what he really created and enabled the citizens to take part in their own way, in their own capacity, in the running of the affairs of the country, in their democratic process, in their economic rights and the social rights. It was all in place, basically.
Sir, the spirit of liberation war has become totally a cliche due to overuse by Awami League. Are the true spirit or desire of liberation war and Awami League narrative on this the same?
No, you see, the whole idea of liberation war is to create a society where every citizen could enfranchise their political rights, economic rights, civil rights, political rights. And that is where everything had to stop during the regime of Awami League, you see. As I said, this one-party system was installed, and there was no free market. It was command economy. The state was running the whole show. And when the state runs the economic affair of the country, it is obviously the fortunate one belonging the ruling regime who are the most beneficiary and depriving the whole rest of the nation. So what is happening again, all over again right now, actually, it's again an oligarchic society, Bangladesh. Bangladesh does not today really enjoy a free market economy. It's again the oligarchs has taken over. In those days, Awami, the leadership took the benefit, their people benefited in their own way by a state-run economy, command economy. Today, the oligarchs have taken over. So it's like two sides of the same story, basically. One, after the liberation, they practically exploited the nation in one under the name of sort of Bakshal and one-party system. Now they have created the oligarchic Bangladesh. The oligarchs are running the country. They are controlling the economy of the country. They are controlling the politics of the country. They are practically, the resources and the wealth of the country are concentrating in the in the hands of only few who belongs to this oligarchic society, the ruling regime. So Bangladesh, in a way, I think has gone back to the same the regime that was then Awami regime that really exploited the people and the nation. I think we have really gone back to the same situation today.
Sir, we hear a lot about the 1975 tragedy, and if we follow the Awami League version, they try to accuse Shahid President Zia Rahman for that. Can you please tell us impartially what was his role at that time?
No, President Zia Rahman was the deputy chief of the army at the time. He was not the chief of the army. And when he was given the news of the assassination, he, like a real soldier, his reaction was, the vice president is there. When the president is killed, the vice president is there. And so, what is wrong with that? They interpreted it completely wrongly. Anybody in any nation, when the number one goes, the next person takes over. If you believe in democratic process, you know. So he said exactly the same thing, that when the president is dead, the vice president takes over. And like in the USA, when John F. Kennedy was killed, the vice president took over. Johnson took over. I mean, this is the norms of any democratic process. So that's what President Zia Rahman said at the time. So if the president is dead, so there is a vice president who should take over. I mean, he didn't talk about taking over, military takeover, or he himself getting involved with it. He said what was the democratic norms, because he believes in democracy. That was the democratic norms. If number one dies, the vice president takes over. That's what he said. So, I mean, if the army had an intention of taking over, he was not the number one, he was number two. It was the chief of army at the time was, what's his name? The army chief at the time was Shafiullah. So he was the army chief, so he didn't even talk about anybody else taking over. He was thinking in a completely democratic way, that the number two, the vice president should take over. So, I mean, President Zia's, you see, he's very clear in his thoughts. Because if the vice president doesn't take over, who else takes over in a democratic process, if you believe in that? So that's what he said. And subsequently, he was one of these martial law administrators, I think that was three or four of them. And he had no chance of taking over either because he was not the army chief at that time. So when they talk about the 15th August, he was nowhere to be seen because he never had any authority to call martial law, take over. None of these things had happened. So I think it was quite normal thing to do. What else could he have done? As the deputy chief of army, there's nothing else he could have done. What he said was very democratic, and that is the democratic norms for the vice president to take over. Number two, to take over. That's what he proposed. So what is wrong with that? He never talked of military takeover, and he was in no position to do that. He was number two in the army at that time.
So it's very interesting that Awami League never blames Shafiullah, who was the chief at that time, or never blames the air chief, Mr. I forgot the name right now, but they never blame them. They always drag Shahid President Zia Rahman for 1975 incident. That's very unfortunate. Sir, I have another question for you. It will be great that if you could explain Colonel Rashid's interview with Anthony Mascarenhas and jail killings on November 3rd, 1975.
Actually, as a matter of fact, okay, President Zia Rahman was actually imprisoned by the Khalid Musharraf at the time, and he was in no way he could be involved in the jail killing because he himself was imprisoned by Khalid Musharraf at the time. So where does the question of Zia Rahman comes in? I do not really understand because he was already imprisoned by Khalid Musharraf at that time. And Anthony Mascarenhas, there was a lot of story about Anthony Mascarenhas. I don't want to go into all that, about his taking advantage out of the then ruling dispensation. So there has been a lot of story, but I don't want to go into all that. But one thing for sure, President Zia Rahman was already in prison when the jail killing took place. He was already in prison. And Khalid Musharraf was the one who took over at the time. So if there is any responsibility, I think they have to be accounted for that.
I mean, it was impossible for him to be involved in that incident.
No, he was already in prison by Khalid Musharraf at that time. Absolutely. And he was in charge. So if anybody has to be responsible, I think it is the Khalid Musharraf and his gang has to be responsible. Zia Rahman was nowhere because he was already in prison at the time. And I think Anthony Mascarenhas himself was questionable at the time because it was known that he was taking some advantage out of the then dispensation regime, the government of at the time. So I don't want to go into all that, but Anthony Mascarenhas' integrity was also questioned at the time.
Sir, many loves to hold Shahid President Zia Rahman responsible for Tahir's punishment. What's your remark on that?
So Colonel Tahir's killing is, you see, so I mean, in a so-called revolution in the army, they killed so many army officers, renowned officers. I mean, if in the army discipline, it has to be accounted through army rules and practices. So that was done, and they killed about 10, 12 officers, and it cannot go with complete impunity. Obviously, this has nothing to do with who was the prime minister, who was the president at the time. It is the law will take its own course. So where does the Zia Rahman comes into the picture? I don't really understand. Colonel Tahir had this imaginary revolution or whatever he did. And for that, he had to face the law and the punishment. And and he killed the truly, I mean, 10, 12 officers were killed. And if it goes with impunity, you think there will be any discipline in the army and there is any discipline in the country. Obviously, the president or prime minister had nothing to do with that process. This was the normal process had to be carried out. So trying to blame Ziaur Rahman, bring into the picture, is like political vendetta. I mean, it's like, it's not an understanding of the situation. So I don't think that it really has any merit. It doesn't hold any water, actually. So I didn't really care to talk much about it, except that any military rules he violated by killing the military officers has to go on with the punishment. It cannot go on impunity. And if it does, then there is no rule of law in the country. No president and the prime minister have any hand in it and cannot have a hand in it because it is an independent system that works for itself. So to bringing in politically motivated character into the picture is not acceptable.
Sir, there is an ongoing propaganda that Shahid Zia was responsible for hanging many soldiers after 1977. What's your take on that?
No. If there is, you see, if there is indiscipline in a disciplined force like army, the army has its own rule, and they follow their own because you cannot afford to have a disciplined forces where where the role of any serving army or soldiers who violate such rules, they have their own rules. They have to follow the rules. And that has nothing to do with the Ziaur Rahman or anybody else who is at the power at the time. Because these are standard rules and this cannot be confused with the discipline of the forces, which is very important. If at the time or any time, this cannot be compromised in any of the discipline forces rules and regulation has to be strictly abided by.
Absolutely. Sir, after August 15, 1975, there was a massive disarray in the armed forces. Can you please put some lights on General Zia's success and failure on his efforts to reestablish the order and chain of command in the army?
August 15 killing of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. What can a deputy chief of army do, really? Think about it. I mean, when it was put to him, the news of death of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, he said there is a vice president. He said, so what? There is a vice president. And as a military officer, as a professional officer, that is the correct thing to say. If he is a Democrat, if he believes in democracy, that all of us know that the vice president takes the place. Like the death of President Kennedy. After his death, Johnson had taken over as a vice president, as the charge of the president. So he had rightly said that, so what, the vice president takes over. He did not talk about army revolution. He did not come talk about taking the power from the civilian government. He said, so what, there's a vice president who can take over, which is the right thing to say and do. If you are a Democrat, if you believe in democracy, because Ziaur Rahman was a Democrat, he said that the vice president will take over. That means army had no role in it. Nobody else had any role in it. If you believe the continuation of a government democratically, the vice president takes over. That's what he said. That's all he can say. I mean, as a professional army officer, as a Democrat, that is what he should have said, and that's what he said. What else could he have said? So I don't see how it can be interpreted in any other way. I mean, because he was not even an army chief, he was the deputy army chief. The question of taking over does not arise, and he is not even giving that space and room for army takeover in his comment. He's talking about the vice president. Very democratic attitude, very correct position to take. So that's what he did. And there is no room for interpreting it any other way.
So do you want to add a few words about bringing back and reestablishing the chain of command in army after 75?
Yes, of course. I mean, that was a total chaos in the country. And as a truly professional army officer, it was his job. And he confronted it. Many did not have the guts to confront it. He confronted it. He faced it at the risk of his life, his family life. He did not shy away from it because he was a professional soldier. He did not shy away from it. And he confronted it and he resolved it. That's how the order was brought back in the army. And whenever subsequent this so-called revolution took place to create indiscipline in army, he took care of that. And he did not take care of them himself. It was through the army rules it was taken care of. And that's what made Bangladesh army what it is today, or what it was today. What it was then. That's what made Bangladesh army what it was then. And they carried on the pride, tradition of the army. And that's all he did, and he could do it. And he had the ability to do it. And he should be given total credit for it. And he really brought back the discipline in the army. And that carried on for a long time. That carried Bangladesh through a prosperous time because army was disciplined. The army was professionally run. That was his contribution for Bangladesh army. So, I mean, all credit to President Ziaur Rahman.
Sir, can you please tell us about the Shahid Zia's magic in uniting the nation, increasing agriculture and industrial production, and boosting the economy? How was the country transformed so fast from a famine-stricken economy to a self-reliant, sustainable one?
Uniting the nation is one issue Zia did so well. After the independence, we know that with the one-party regime, how the democracy was completely destroyed. Democratic process was completely destroyed. And the country was divided in many ways, socially, economically, and politically. In all respect, the democratic process was completely destroyed. Economy was destroyed due to one-party system and command economy. And social system was because of the goons of the ruling regime and the chaos they created in the country. So I think President Zia's first role was to unite the nation by allowing a political system whereby every party was allowed to participate to start with, and multi-party system, from one-party system to multi-party system. And so everybody had a level playing field in participating in the political arena. Secondly, he created the same in the economic arena. So by creating the level playing field for everybody to participate in the economic activities of the country, from the entrepreneurs to the workers, to the peasant, the farmers, the professionals. Everybody had the opportunity to participate in the economic arena of the country, also in the political field. So that was a level playing field he created, economically, politically, socially. That created a sense of belonging to the nation. And when the citizens' rights were given, the freedom of expression, the citizens were allowed to elect their own representative, who were in turn accountable to them, and the market was made free. Instead of state-controlled economy, it was made free for everybody's participation. So from the workers to entrepreneurs to the professionals, I think everybody was at their own will to do what they wanted to do at the time. And state was supportive in a in the role of facilitation rather than control. And under one-party system, we have seen that it was all a controlled economy, a command economy. So it was made free for all citizens at par. Everybody could participate. So that was a great achievement at the time, and that created a national consensus to go for a nation whereby everybody has the equal opportunity. You see, and from the earlier crony capitalism, from the earlier state-controlled or the party-controlled regime to an open society, a free society, a free market economy, really opened the way for everybody to participate equally. And that created the incentive at all levels, from the workers to the farmers to the entrepreneurs, to participate in the development of the country. And he also opened the economy in the way that the financial sector was opened up and industrial sector was opened up. And farmers were given all the support and incentive. Laborers were also given incentive, you see. So everybody had participated in the prosperity of the country. And not only through economic emancipation, I think he emancipated politically. And from one-party system to multi-party system came into being, and all politicians were given the freedom to participate in the free, fair election. And we have seen one of the best parliaments in those days, where I think almost every small, big, medium party was well represented. And the debates in those parliaments were remarkable, you see, and still we all remember very fondly. Go back and listen to those debates that took place at the time, because everybody was given the opportunity. And President Ziaur Rahman created the unity in diversity, the unity in the sense of Bangladeshi nationalism, not like compared to earlier the Bengali nationalism, which is limited to one section of people, to multinationals. All the nationals of the state, all the citizens of the state could participate in politics in their own way. So it was like a free market economy. Everybody could participate at all levels, all citizens. And in politics, it was the same. And so the parliament was a very rich parliament at the time. And so that also contributed to the policy decision-making process was very transparent and fair. And it was all discussed in the parliament, and all the committees performed very well at the time. So I think he established a sense of Bangladesh being a proud nation, having a democracy that is being participated, an economy, a free market economy where entrepreneurs were created and the workers were really taken care of through incentives. The farmers were again taken care of through various support, input support, as well as infrastructure support. The rural electricity board was created. The irrigation system was he created in many ways, like Tista Barrage. By creating, he facilitated a great part of the country to be irrigated. So the farmers were emancipated and empowered. And workers were again given the incentive to work, you see, 2, 3, we call it shifts at the time. Instead of one shift, he created 2, 3 shifts of working people. And they were given proper incentives for production. So I think everybody was incentivized to do their job and perform their job. That created national wealth. That created employment. That created export. And that created the overseas employment also, because it is through his effort in the Middle Eastern countries. At the state level, he opened up the employment for Bangladeshis to go to those countries and work and send the remittance. And what we see today, the remittance and the export, is all his contribution, the garment sector and the remittance, that money we are getting today. So basically, Bangladesh is standing up even today at 2 big pillars like remittance and the export. So this was all his creation, basically. And it was all done through free market economy. The people could participate. Everybody, whoever had whatever capacity, could participate in the economic development of the country. And that is how Bangladesh is where it is today, actually. I mean, we can all take today, we can say all sorts of things, given the prosperity has come to the nation through his policies. So various people seem to claim the credit for it. And so it's not a problem, but the fact that he created the base for a free market economy, a free electoral process, and a political scenario where people can participate across the board in the electoral process, in political process. So I think it was a total transformation of a nation after the independence. What the independence we all fought for at the time, the reason for that was to have a free nation, for everybody to be able to participate in the economic activities, everybody to be able to participate in the political activities. And it was the people's ownership of the nation, which was the aim of the liberation war. And that was all created by President Zia, basically.
Sir, as you have just said, that the mainstay of our economy today still is the export of ready-made garments, manpower, and non-traditional goods set by Sheikh President Zia Rahman. How did this man get so much vision?
Well, this is, I mean, there are all sorts of anecdote about it, you know. Various people have various stories about it. And one thing for sure, that he believed in participatory politics. He believed in participatory policy-making process. And this is how the policies that he evolved really worked well for the country. You see, he talked to people, and his cabinet was one of the stardom of the country in those days, you see. And they were kept on alert the whole time. And President Zia he worked himself round the clock, basically, but he had very little sleep during the night. He worked the rest of the hours. He was at work the whole time, basically, not in his office. He was at work in his office. He was working around the whole country, working the fields of farmers, the workers' home, the industries, the agricultural fields. He was everywhere. And he made politics difficult for the typical politicians because he worked through the whole country. He talked to all people across the board. He talked to the workers. He talked to the entrepreneurs. And this is amazing how he formed his policies. And this one anecdote, I remember very clearly that he called up one of the ex-diplomat to his home, invited him for the breakfast. And that ex-diplomat was looking forward to a big breakfast in the president's house, you see, only to find that the breakfast was all about a flatbread, a roti, and a bhaji, you see. But the discussion was big. The meal was very small. The discussion was big, and this ex-diplomat was writing about the local government. His writings was about the local government. So he was wondering why the president had called him, you know. And in fact, he was in fear. He went with big expectation for a big breakfast, which never came. But he came back happy. The discussion went very well because the president wanted to know from him that he has been writing about local government. So he was interacting with him, wanted to know more about it. And he said, I have not finished with you today. I have to sit down with you another day. So this is how the anecdotes, too many anecdotes goes around, you know. And like one, I had witnessed myself going in Holland. We were going on a canal trip in Holland. And the guy who was handling the boat was asking us, which country do you come from? I said, from Bangladesh. And he said, oh, you're from Bangladesh? Oh, your president was here. I said, are you joking? He's an old man, very old, elderly person. He said, I said, when was this? Which president? He said, it's around 78, 79. Then I said, oh, president, was it President? Yes, he said, President Zia. So what was it about? Then he said, he came to see how these canals function, you know, at various levels. Even these canals function about 10, 15 feet above the ground level because the water management is like that. So he went to learn that and he installed that. So there are so many anecdotes that this gentleman, you see, had worked. He had this craving for knowledge to interpret into his own country. And in Germany, when he was there and stayed busy, at night time, when all meetings were over, he was asked, it was a time for entertainment, basically, relaxation and entertainment. And he said, no, I don't want to go for any entertainment, no relaxation. So somebody was looking for a president. We said, your president is in a coal mine right now at night, you know. He said, he's in a coal mine? Yes, he's in a coal mine inside the mine, you see, and trying to find out how this coal mine works because he had planned about Bangladesh coal mines and all this. So there are so many anecdotes that in his work hours, off hours, practically as long as he's alive, he was working, you know, at home and abroad. So this is how, in such a short period, he transformed the whole economy of the country, the culture of work in the country, the culture of politics of the country. A person in only in few years' time, he has transformed this country into a completely different country from a very backward, on agriculture, on industry, on entrepreneurship, in politics. He has transformed everything in a matter of few years only. It is a shame that he had to go in such a short period. So this is him. I mean, he is somebody. I always compare him. As a matter of fact, when some people tell me that you go a little overboard, I said no, I don't go overboard because he was a general. He was a man who declared the independence of the country. He was the first freedom fighter. He was a reformist, a major reformist, you see, and he was the army general. And so when I compare this gentleman, President Zia, he can have a handful of people around the world. George Washington is one who fought the freedom of war, who fought the frontal war, who was a reformer, who was a statesman, who was a politician, all in one. If he can be compared with really globally, only a handful of people can be compared with him. So when somebody says, how can you compare with so-and-so in Bangladesh, and I said, I don't want to compare him with anybody. I want to compare him with only a handful of people globally that will not cross 5 or 6. This is what he was. And he was everybody. He was everything. He was a statesman. He was a general. He was a politician. He was a reformer. I mean, what is he not? I mean, this one man in such a short time to evaluate this gentleman, I think it's going to take a long time than what we can really talk about. We can go on forever.
Shahid Zia made Bangladesh the member of the Security Council, defeating Japan and Quds Committee. He made India accept and sign Ganga River Treaty with guaranteed force. How could he achieve this remarkable success in his very short tenure?
Well, this is the man with vision, as I described earlier. The man who was everything in one. You see, and I think his vision was internally and externally something really amazing. At home, I think his cabinet was, as I said, is like a stardom, like the people that he chose. Beyond that, he talked to anybody and everybody who he thought at the time would be of any use to the country and the people of the country. And he did that continuously. I think every morning he had breakfast with somebody or other to know whatever he wanted to know at the time. Because no president in the world knows everything. And he took the cue from the wise people, that a wise people can be only wise who can draw on somebody else's knowledge, And that he did very well. He drew on the knowledge of all the best people in his cabinet, outside his cabinet, in Bangladesh and externally. So he drew from everybody. And that was his asset. And that is a leadership. That is what makes a statesman, a politician. That is what makes a visionary. So that's how he really worked, And so going about that, he had formulated policy which no South Asian leader saw at the time. No South Asian leader. I can say with quite big emphasis, because look at his free market policy and how he had developed the investment policy in Bangladesh. You see, the export processing zones. No country in the South Asia thought about that at the time. Export processing zone, foreign investment, and the development of local entrepreneurship across the board. The market economy that created space for anybody and everybody who wanted to take the opportunity. And he helped everybody. And I remember another anecdote, going in the aircraft, not me, a friend of mine was telling me that how he talked to everybody. And when he came to this gentleman, my friend, he was a businessman. And he said, he said to him, why don't you set up an industry which will employ our people? Because running a trade is okay, but running an industry will create employment for our people. Why don't you do that? He said, where will I get the money? Who will give me the permission? And President Zia asked his secretary, he said, give him my number, the president's telephone number and your number, and see how you can help him. And later he set up big industry and he employed a lot of people. So this is how he worked. You see, I mean, he really encouraged anybody and everybody in all respect. He went to the homes of workers, talked to them. The problem and how they could be incentivized, how they could be the big part of a production system in the country. You see, he talked to the entrepreneurs. What is there like the ones I give the example of in the aircraft, that he went and talked to these people. And what is the problem? Why don't you invest? Why don't you go for industry, create employment for the country, go for export? You see, he is the one, look at the slogans. Slogans of what? He says, the politics of growth, the politics of production, not the growth, sorry, the politics of production. So, I mean, coming from somebody whose background is in the army, and talking about production, and involving all the business community, involving the whole of the workers group, involving the professionals in every respect, that the politics of production it tells you the whole story, that everybody can understand that what he means by that. You see, so and that's how the production in the field, that's how production in the industry and the service sector, everything grew just like that, and the professional could make the most of it because of his policy, and the private sector was given all the opportunity. You see, from the loans to the assistance and the youth development programs, the women development programs. I mean, you talk about it. And the prosperity of the children and the cultural field of Bangladesh. He touched every part of the people's life, every part of people's life. So, and successfully. So, when a nation has to grow, you see, all sections of the people must be involved. He understood it only too well. And he involved every section of the people. Nobody was left out. Nobody was left behind. So everybody was given the opportunity. And see how in these 3-4 years, the whole country came together. The people came together. And the unity of the nation, the Bangladeshi nationalism brought everybody together. The free market economy that he created, given everybody the opportunity. From the workers to the professionals to the entrepreneurs, you name it, everybody was in it. Everybody was given the free and fair chance to participate in the economy. And same with the educational institutions, how he transformed the educational institutions. I mean, he never interfered with any really institution politically. The appointment was never made politically. No appointment for any teacher in the universities was made politically. Yes, if he belongs to, he can be a supporter of BNP. There is not a problem with that, but he must have the efficiency, the professionalism to be able to do the job. He never made any compromise there. So, I mean, in all respect, I think his vision, his honesty, again, I can go on forever talking about his honesty. I think it's an example before all of us doing politics in Bangladesh today. And let us really follow his honesty, the policy of honesty, that how he carried on. And that was his strength, because he was honest. He could do things, he could tell things, he could be, I mean, at any forum, not being questioned for his honesty. How many leaders in the world can do that, you see? And he's not only united the nation, he also united the groups of nations, like Islamic nations in the one way, like LDC, least developed countries, you know, and he was there. Non-aligned countries, he was there. And of course, the Western country as friends. And his length and breadth of friendship between the groups of various interests really made him the leader that he was. And that really reflected in his policies and in his work. And that encouraged the whole nation. And that elevated Bangladesh in a very different level with the Middle Eastern countries, with the non-aligned countries, with the Western countries. But But at that time, Bangladesh economy was not that big, but it was the base he established for the economy, the rules he laid down, the economic rules which really helped the growth of the country, of a free market economy, given the opportunity. And look at the ladies, how he lifted the ladies up. They were in politics, they were made ministers, they were made ambassadors at that time. You see how he lifted the ladies and how he created the Ministry for Women and Children, Women and the Children. The ministry was made for the ladies separately. And the Youth Ministry was given for the youth, for the special attention, you see. And I mean, so he really knew only too well that without the participation of people across the board, for all sections of the country, all religion of the country, all caste of the country, everybody must have role, an equal role. That's Bangladeshi nationalism, the equal role for everybody. That he created so well, you know. And that is the true answer to any development, any growth, any prosperity of any nation has to come through that. He realized it only too well. He created level playing field for everybody in the country, irrespective of religion, caste, creed, where they come from. Everybody felt the part of Bangladesh, that equal partner, shoulder to shoulder, the whole citizens felt the part of a Bangladeshi, that he has a job to do. He needs to do it. He felt people proud of their country. You see, this is very important. Unless you are a proud nation, you cannot really serve, you cannot really grow to a level of global power. So I think he has created everything for us. The whole base is created for the nation, economically, socially, politically. I think he has shown the way, and this is where Bangladesh is today, in spite of the dictators coming and going, instead of so-called political dictators that who come rule the country, in spite of this disenfranchisement of the citizen, in spite of, human rights violations, in spite of, looting the country's economic sector completely. All these things. 6 million people today facing the false cases, opposition leadership. You see, thousands of opposition leaders were killed, kidnapped. You see, everybody in basically the fruits of the economy is being enjoyed by the group of people, and the rest of the country is deprived. But still the country is surviving, because the base President Zia has created. The economic base, the private sector-led growth, export-led growth, that is still keeping this country going, in spite of all the looting, in spite of disenfranchisement, in spite of human rights violation, killing, destroying the political system, destroying the electoral system. The country is still surviving because the foundation Zia laid on the economic side, on the political side, although it's destroyed now. Now there is no free market economy. It is oligarchy, rule of some families in the economic arena, in political arena. Basically, the economic area is completely taken over. Politics is completely taken over, and the rule of law is taken over. And we are all faced with such fatalistic future that I don't know where you all end up. But I think Zia ideology, his thoughts, his ideas, and his sense of direction keeps us going as Bangladeshi. And I think that's the future of Bangladesh. Zia showed the way. That's the way we should all follow, really. Sorry, I think I went on for too long.
Sir, many compares Shahid Zia's advisory council with Akbar's advisory council, now Ratan Shah, as you know. and many of them are not they directly connected with Sheikh Zia's party, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, for example, education advisor Mr. Abul Fadl. How was he able to make it happen? What was his magic?
Well, this patriotism, basically, he wanted good for the country and the people of Bangladesh. And he wanted to make this country a proud nation. That was the whole idea. And unless you have that capacity to absorb, to create space for everybody who can contribute to the development of a nation. The development of a nation is not a development of a political party or a group of people. It has to be done by the people across the board who can really contribute. I think he understood it too well. It doesn't matter whether he belongs to BNP or not, but he understood the potential of each and everybody who can contribute in the development of the nation. And he chose accordingly. And these people, this was his strength. You see, he has a very strong cabinet and who were really champion in their own arena, who were the experts and who could contribute to the development of a nation. That was his idea of selecting a cabinet, and he did it accordingly, and that helped him greatly also. And the surprising thing, that was not enough for him. He went beyond that. As I say, he talked to people whom he thought would contribute in development of his policy, development of the country, beyond the cabinet. You see, he talked to the people in breakfast, for dinner. He called them up, invited them, talked to them. Like the gentleman I mentioned who was writing on local government. He invited him for breakfast, talked to him, and asked his opinion on local government, you see. Although he was disappointed in the breakfast of the president, Zia, but no matter. I mean, he was so happy leaving him that a president of the country can be so participatory, so interactive in policy-making decisions with all citizens across the board, whoever can contribute. So this is very rare in politics because politicians are like narcissists, I always call, They're like narcissists, They think they know it all, They understand it all, and they are the best, and people should submit to them, people should respect them, and people should, always expecting something. But he was none of that. So this is the difference between him and normal politicians, the big difference. He was not expecting that people should really, fall for him, and he's the great guy, so he never expected that. He thought, whoever he thought of having any competence, any potential to contribute, I think he took the advice of everybody and anybody. And that is leadership, actually. Not many of us understand these things. A lot of us think that we understand, we know things. I am very, liked by people. I'm a big leader. But he never bothered for all that. All he was interested is to formulate policies, develop policies, and execute it. And the people who can do it, he's always interested to recruit them, irrespective of their political affiliation. So that was really greatness of him. And actually, that is the way of success. It's the smart people, intelligent people, the statesmen, not just the politicians, who are the statesmen can understand that. He was a statesman, he was a reformer, he was a politician, he was a general, he gave the War of Independence call, and he fought the frontal war. So he has done a bit of all the things that one person cannot do in his lifetime, but he has done it.
Absolutely, in 3 years only.
Yeah, only 3 years. He didn't do the full term of 5 years even. So imagine a person. So what people can do, you see, having the will to do it, having the honesty to do it, and having the patriotism to do it. And he has done that. He has shown it. He has shown us what the politics should be like. And we should not deviate from that. As a political party, as a human being, as a person, he has shown us the way. Easy way, just to follow him. Every step of the way he has followed us. He showed us the way to go forward.
He is basically a goal achiever, sir. Sir, my next question is, can you give us a brief idea about his plans and, his ideas, how to develop youth and sports and culture, things like that?
Well, as I said, he touched every aspect of life in Bangladesh. Women, as I said, he recruited women in all the services of the state, basically. And in politics, he encouraged women. And in those days, he encouraged as many women in politics, in police, in civil service. And he tried his best to increase the participation of the women. And as for the youth, as I mentioned earlier on, and his program for youths and women and culture, he started this Notun Kuri, he recruited all the young singers and dramatists, and on the cultural areas, he recruited young people across. You see, this is the difference of the centralization of power and the way President Zia thought of running the country. He realized that Dhaka is not the only place where people live, you see, and people deserve to be in high places. He realized that whole of Bangladesh has the potential people, not only in politics, in culture, in agriculture, in academia, in profession. And he made sure that people across the country are properly represented. So he went around the people, he met people, asked people, talked to people. Wherever he saw the potential, he invited them, and he really used them for his own purpose of culture, you say, for agriculture, for politics, for economy, for education, you name it. And he really recruited people from across the country. And this is one way of looking at people who are not within your own circle, you see. Because our own problem is everything is Dhaka-centric. People who live in Dhaka, you see, is Bangladesh. And Bangladesh is the people who live in, and they decide. But he crossed that barrier very successfully. Whether it's culture, whether it's politics, he recruited people from all over the country. And see the people who are in really politics, culture, and sing in all aspect of life. He did that. And also he realized the potential of the country, like on agriculture, for example. And so he recruited the right person who can run the Ministry of Agriculture. And what are the areas the country's potential, the potential the country has? And he really developed those sectors. In industry, he developed this export-led growth. He realized that Bangladesh economy was not strong enough to create a demand within the country, which will drive the economy. He realized that we have to export the goods where the demands are, where the people are rich, where the people can afford. So what can we do? Then he realized the ready-made garment sector is one area we can work on. And he worked with the Koreans, Deo Corporation, joint venture, then started the EPZs, export processing zones he started, and then he invited foreign investors. So from foreign investors, Bangladeshis could learn and develop their own business. So on the one hand, he had a lot of foreign investors incentive, but the locals also took the queue from foreign investors to set up the garment industry and export-oriented industries. And for that, he set up economic export processing zones. Before anybody in South Asia, nobody had, no country started this in South Asia. He did that. So basically, he tapped the potential of the countries today, like the workers today. I mean, Bangladeshis were going to Middle East and working for the long time, but that was a trickle of how many people, very small number of people individually going to places. But he made it a bipartisan thing, you see, signing agreements with the Middle Eastern countries and make our workers going abroad working officially through government channels. And he has signed all the agreements with the Middle Eastern countries. And today, whatever you see by way of remittance, because this is his doing, And he realized that Bangladesh cannot provide such jobs. It's not possible. The economy did not have that strength to create employment. So we need foreign currency, we need employment. So he realized that these people have to go abroad and work. So he went and, worked with the Middle Eastern country because he was also well respected there. So he arranged all these workers to go there. And this is how the remittance today, what we see today. And export is similar to that and the export industry, not just the garment, the zones that he created. So basically, this women's emancipation in the garment industry, see the women's participation. I mean, how many countries have it in South Asia, really? The 2, 3, 4 million women were involved in a job. This is because of garment industry in Bangladesh. And this is his doing, really. And today, the women are emancipated. They're the earners in the family, proud earners in the family. The women emancipation cannot be done through lecturing. It has to be done through their empowering, through their source of income, you see. When the women have the source of income, that is her strength in the family, in the society. And she earns her own position. So he realized that, so it is that created women emancipation in Bangladesh greatly. And today you see that how the society has really transformed through that. The women are working is not just in garment, but every sphere of life, because that was the path shown by him that they can also do it, So this is a great achievement for a nation. Not many people in South Asia and a country like Bangladesh could do that, So, I mean, and private sector entrepreneurship development is his creation, basically. He encouraged private sector. He made sure that they get the credit support from the banks. He made sure the policy supports are there, which was so complicated before. You set up an industry or business. He made it very simple. EPZs are very simple. And he made garments back to vacancy, and because through that, the export and import he made it very easy. So basically, the private sector development, free market economy created the Bangladesh economy what it is today. And again, it is him, basically. I mean, his policies really showed the way.
Sir, many envy his honesty, and he is known as a very, very honest politician. I'm sure that you don't know the names of his relatives, like his cousins, his brother, or his sister. Just unlike we all know about the family members of Sheikh Mujib. So what's your take on that?
Well, this is it. You see, I mean, again, there are many anecdotes about him not allowing even his close family members to the Bongo. You see, these are the anecdotes, and people say it in so many ways. And because he didn't want to corrupt the system. He wanted the system to work independently.
Yes.
So that it doesn't get corrupted. You see, when your relations get involved, when your friends get involved, then obviously the whole thing slowly gets corrupt. And he realized it too well. So, I mean, he never allowed his own family members in many ways. This is the anecdote that goes around, and he said things that I don't want to mention them, but that this is the president's house, and it it should have its own integrity and honesty, and people should not be able to given the chance to criticize
Right.
if it goes wrong. So he maintained that very well, this honesty, and he himself was so honest that nobody could question him. And therefore he could question everybody. See, if you are honest and you know nobody can question you, he is able to question everybody and anybody he felt necessary. And that was a big deterrent for everybody else. The message was given loud and clear. You fall in line or you'll be thrown out. And he did that also. So I think he lived by example. You see, people say big things and very big. You see, our politicians are used to saying the things that we don't really believe in. But he said what he believed in. So he was well respected for that and well listened to. And the ones who could not, abide by that principle actually could not continue with him. And that sent a message across the board, you see. And you see, the politically, economically, socially, when your leadership takes a moral position, a moral high ground, that's a message for everybody else. And that helped the country go forward in that 4 years. So much so, it's unbelievable. That small period should be remembered. Not just the growth of the economy, is how the honesty, how the political process worked, how the economic norms had developed an economy which is sustainable, you see. And the civil servants got the message, they knew what to do or not to do. Because he lived by example. He showed the example himself. He was honest. He was in time, and he never wasted time. He made sure everybody do their duty on time. And so, I mean, he lived by example, so everybody else had to follow. And politicians, if we all live by our example, I think things should change. So this is something we should follow, our leadership.
So Shahid Zia's thoughts on children, teenagers, and young people are completely different. His tour with talents in the Sheikh Hizbul Bahar has been much discussed. Can you say something more about this?
Well, this is a true example. Again, as I was saying, a true example of a leader who brought along with him the young, bright students on a ship trip, day-long ship trip in Chittagong. And in that trip, he discussed just about everything about the future of the country and the role of the new generation, like the blue economy, and what the resources of the sea can be, how it can be best utilized, And he discussed that. And he always wanted to learn from people. He wanted their opinions, the young, bright students, scholars that he took with him. He wanted their opinion. What is their opinion on the developing of blue economy, the resources that we have in the sea, and the rest of it, and that how they should contribute in the economy of the country, and what are their thoughts on various issues of the country. And day-long trip, a president, you see, these are the examples.
Unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. These are the examples he said that I don't know how many politicians followed forget about subcontinent. I think not many global people, leadership could do that. So taking the bright, intelligent students for a day trip, listening to them, giving them his mind and listening to their mind and interaction on issues of national development, including the sea resources, is an example, he said, in many ways that worth remembering. And that trip, I met so many people who joined that trip later on. And the experience they told me, this is unbelievable. I mean, a president sitting down with them all day long, discussing things, listening to them, not just telling them, giving them lecture, just listening to them, the ideas. So this is an example for all of us actually to follow, how we should learn to listen and how we should learn to listen from various stakeholders across the board, that everybody has experience, everybody has the way to contribute. This is the learn the politicians should learn actually. I mean, politics is not what I know and what I should do, is what many people think we should do, what many people understands how it should be done, you see. This is the politics that he created, and unfortunately we could not really follow in letter and in spirit. But I think we should try and do it. At least it's never too late.
Of course, sir. His management of the cabinet and administration is absolutely groundbreaking. I want to know more about it. And I heard that he used to hold cabinet meetings in the middle of the night, travel around the country all day, and call the deputy commissioners late at night to find out if any MP or leader is bothering them. If we compare this to the present situation, it seems unbelievable.
Well, you see, he was on the job the whole time.
He was on the call all the time, yeah.
As I said earlier, he was on the job the whole time. And he believed in that because in a country like Bangladesh, where not everything is set and where not everything is laid down and everything will be done and the process is followed properly. So he realized that, so he had to make sure that everybody has to do beyond the normal time, and whether and also the accountability of it. And how do you establish accountability? Unfortunately, we don't have a system whereby we have been able to establish accountability regime, a system that will be answered automatically. So he had to develop all that, and he had to make all the stakeholders alert with their own job and be accountable of it. And even the ministers of all his ministers were made accountable in so many ways, on a day-to-day basis. He'll pick up a phone at midnight to a minister asking questions and sometimes blaming them. Why don't you know about that? This is your ministry, this is your region, or whatever it is. That why aren't you aware of this? If I have come to know something, that you should have known better than this. So everybody was put on alert, not in a bad way, but put on alert so as to follow their job.
Absolutely.
And a politician's job is never a part-time job or 9-to-5 job. A politician's job is full-time job.
24/7.
And he expected everybody to follow the suit, basically. If you're a politician, you have a job to do, and it is full-time job, and you better understand it. And you better be productive, and you better deliver it, you see. He believed, he is a great believer of delivery of the job, of your assignment. You must deliver and deliver in time. So I think this is something that we also have to learn, that we all have a responsibility to deliver our job and deliver in time. And so this is something I think he also, and you see the training in BNP, the senior minister had to be trained. They had to be sit in the training session, isn't it? He had the training session. What did he call? He set up Prashikkan Sabha, that's right. He has set up an institution whereby everybody, including the ministers, had to sit down and listen and learn and understand and even answer them, if asked about it. So political training, a trained politician, if I may say it, a trained politician is far better politician, far better performer than a non-trained professional. I mean, there are non-trained professionals who can still be good and still be delivering goods. But a trained politician is always expected to deliver their goods in time. So President Zia believed in trained politicians. He wanted to train all the politicians, and which is a good idea. And in politics also, political science, a trained politician is always good at his jobs, So he wanted to train politicians in the country. Everybody should know their job properly and how to resolve issues, solve issues, how to address problems when and if needed. So he wanted to do that. And he himself was trained, as I said, he himself was training himself the whole time. He was listening to his wise cabinet. He was listening to people outside his cabinet. I think he would invite every morning somebody for breakfast or dinner or lunch and talk to them on issues. Like this gentleman he invited was a local government. You see, he said, I have noticed that you have been writing a lot of articles on local government. Please tell me more. I want to know more because I want to install local government which works, which performs for the people. You see, and he talked to also, I know a lot of people that he talked to, he invited them, he talked to, wanted to know. And this is the politicians. This is a statesmanship. And to grasp and understand knowledge that other people have achieved over the years. This should be the approach of politicians. I think we should all follow that. That something that I do not know can always be known from somebody who knows. Why not involve? You see, so involve the people who knows. He did that, and he's always after something new, and like in 3.5 years, below 4 years. Look at his performance. I mean, how is it possible for even a seasoned politician could not do it? But luckily he is open to knowledge. He is open to suggestion. He is open to discussion, which all politicians should be. But politicians are narcissists, as I said. They think they think they know everything, They don't want to listen to others. They don't want to learn, as if learning is some sort of a shame. It's not a shame. One needs to learn from anybody. We learn from each other.
And they're not good listeners most of the time. The politicians, they want to speak, they don't listen.
That's it, absolutely. They are not good listeners. But he would speak less and listen more. Like Begum Zia, listen. Yeah. He would speak less and listen more. I think Mr. Tariq Rahman is somewhat same. He doesn't say much normally. He listens also. So this is what the politicians should be. But by nature, they are not listeners. You're right. So they like to speak all the time.
The most expected final journey of a true Muslim is a dignified funeral. We know that on the day of his funeral, no man in Dhaka and surrounding districts sat at home. We do not know if the funeral of any other person in the world has been so huge and so honorable. Can you put some light on this?
Obviously, President Zia and Bangladesh, the independence of Bangladesh, the announcement of independence of Bangladesh, the frontal war that he fought for Bangladesh, the first freedom fighter, he was fighting the Pakistanis and practically decimating the Pakistani forces and took over charge. And his announcement from Kalugat radio station as a freedom for the independence of Bangladesh. And subsequently, his contribution at a very inflection point in Bangladesh, where he took the charge of the country, and from one-party system, ruined economy, he brought the country back to democratic system, all multi-party system, and through free market economy and all the human rights that is mandated from the United Nations was brought in order in Bangladesh, was put in order in Bangladesh, and subsequently, with not only with the political freedom and order, economic freedom and order, even legal freedom and order that he brought into the legal system, the country saw a huge growth of economic, political, and global recognition through his international politics, his foreign policy, and his own image that he created in the Islamic world, in the non-aligned world, even in the Western world, through his achievement at home and abroad. So I think and also he Bangladesh as a sovereign, as a sovereign country of its with the head high, standing head high in the world and in the region, and that really he touched the heart of Bangladeshis, and his departure at a time when the nation really had a global recognition, and domestically the people of Bangladesh tasted the fruit of democracy and economic growth and participation of civic as citizens of Bangladesh in the economic development of the country, brought the whole country together, and most of all, being a Bangladeshi, bringing in Bangladeshi nationalism into the politics of Bangladesh, that put everybody on the equal footing in the whole country. So whole nation was behind them. So in that case, his death, of course, was such a shock, and that brought the huge crowd together in Dhaka. And I don't think any leader in Bangladesh or elsewhere I know of that had such a big turn up and attendance in his funeral that he did. It's remarkable. It is only the love of the people that can bring together so many people together, bring so many people together. That can only be the love. And nothing else can do that, actually.
Sir, now may I request you to make a comment on the acting chairman of BNP, Mr. Tariq Rahman. Does he portray his father? How safe do you find our country in his hands, and how does he want to shape the country?
I think it follows from President Zia Rahman, and it follows from Begum Zia, that these two great political icons that has showed the way for democracy, for human rights, for rule of law, for economic emancipation of the people of Bangladesh, for a country with pride and sovereign, proud country that was meant to be created to be independent from from Pakistan, that meant to be a free to be created a free country for the nation of Bangladesh, for the people of Bangladesh. And Tariq Rahman really stand up to that. And he is keeping the torch going for the country, for the values that they're put in by President Zia Rahman, Begum Khaleda Zia, that all the values, all the respect, all the success that the country had, he is carrying the torch very well. And I think at a time when President Zia took over, when the country was under one-party system, a repressive government, a broken economy, he rescued, he brought in multi-party democracy, free market economy, participation of all citizens in the economy and politics of the country, and a proud nation that was meant to be after the independence that she created. I think Tariq Rahman is carrying that flag, that mantle very well indeed, and he stands for the same values that the country was created for, that Shahid President Zia Rahman put in place, that Begum Zia had continued, that he is carrying the same mantle for the country and for the people of Bangladesh. And I think his leadership has shown, his leadership is shining, is really shining through, because we can see today all the opposition in the country, which means that 90% of the political parties in the country, they believe in his leadership. And he proved his word by bringing them together, by creating such public support for democracy, for human rights, for rule of law, for equitable economic system in the country, and for all you stand for as a nation. I think he's serving the purpose very well, to make us a proud nation, to make us a future Bangladesh, which we will all be proud of, which the seeds sown by the Zia Rahman and flourished under Begum Zia and under Tariq Rahman, it is going to reach the height of it, true height of it.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your valuable time. Dear viewers, today's special show on Shahid President Zia Rahman gives us an opportunity to look back and see how visionary, successful, honest, hardworking, and pro-people leader he was. His untimely demise was such a loss that can never be recovered by this country. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.